the governors. But they talk about him. They talk about some others. I just don't see Biden doing it from a physical or a mental standpoint.
Yes.
I don't see it. But it's been a crazy period of time in the world of politics. But he's surrounded by people. You know, they expected Bernie to win. Now, Bernie's older than Biden, you know, whether you like him or not. He's sharp. I watched him being interviewed the other day. He's 100% sharp. He hasn't lost much, if anything, Bernie Sanders. But, you know, he's older. So it's not an age thing. I just don't see him.
So they're trying to prevent you from making it to the general election by tying you up in lawsuits, charging you with crimes. You've described the process.
The old Soviet process.
The old Soviet process. And you've described it as illegitimate. If this goes to trial and you get convicted, like how would you respond in the middle of a presidential campaign?
Well, it's so off. Statute of limitations are years off. It's hard to believe. You know, usually when you have something like this, the Democrats say, oh, he's terrible, guilty. The Democrats have even said, I'm innocent. I watched some of these. I think it was Andrew McCabe, the FBI guy who I fired. He came out, he said, they've got no case. They've all come out and said it. And then you've had Andrew McCarthy, you've had Jonathan Turley, Greg Jarrett, Dershowitz, all of them, everybody, like, and they're, you know, down the middle people. They see it, they say, there's no crime, there's no anything. Think of it, Tucker, I've been through 7 years of bull investigations, 7 years. They've looked at, I have a very big company, much bigger than they understand. In fact, when they finally got my taxes, they said, whoa. You know, they took them years to get the taxes. They got them. That was the last you ever heard. You never heard one thing about them. But it took them years to get them, because they shouldn't be looking at my taxes. I was surprised the Supreme Court gave them the right. They shouldn't be looking at people. That's sort of another one of the tenets. You don't do that. But I didn't care that much. I just, on principle, I fought them. And they looked, I built a great company. When you do the things that I do, and you employ thousands and thousands of people over the years, just thousands, we've done a great job. And then I ran for president. People were surprised that I won. But I used to see these rallies, and I'll tell you, the rallies are bigger now. The enthusiasm is more now than I've ever seen. So what do you think, since your poll numbers have risen consistently since they raided this place, Mar-a-Lago? Well, before they raided,
in August.
They were going up substantially before.
They definitely moved.
Since then, they've really been going up.
So how do you think that your opponents will respond?
I don't know how well. We have two opponents. We have a primary opponent. We have a general election opponent.
I mean the Democratic Party using the legal system.
Well, what they're doing is they're finding, and think of this, they say 11 million pages, but whatever it is, through all of these Democrats' investigations. I had the Mueller hoax. I had impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2. Ukraine, 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 Russia, Russia, Russia. You knew the Russia, Russia, Russia. I got that whole term from you. Russia, Russia, Russia. You'd be screaming it and say, this guy's a comedian. But you remember that whole period of time.
Quite well.
It turned out to be a total fake. But think of this. You know, I tell the story very seldom, but because it's a sad story. So the Russia, Russia, Russia hoax was made up by crooked Hillary Clinton, Adam Schiff, the DNC, the Democrat Party. The dossier is a total fake thing. We're suing them now, as you know, on that. We're suing them a lot because, unfortunately, Bill Barr didn't have the courage to do what he should have done. He was so afraid of being impeached. So I have to do it civilly. I have to sue people. The Justice Department should have done, because these are criminals. But think of this. So you have all of these millions and millions of pages, and they get you on a non-disclosure agreement. I mean, big numbers, billions and billions of dollars, right? And they get you on a perfect non-disclosure agreement where they get you on nothing. A friend of mine who's a big business guy said, you have to be the most honest guy in the world, because with all of those numbers that you have and those big numbers, they don't have anything. And you have to see, take a look at the people I just mentioned. Read what they said. There was no crime. In fact, a lot of people saying he indicted somebody. There's no crime. That's illegal to do. You know what he did. So I don't see it going. I mean, we'll have to see.
So, but just to bottom line it, the purpose of this is to keep you out of the presidential race.
If I weren't running, or if I had bad poll numbers, let's say.
Right.
And again, remember, the Democrats are the party of disinformation. If they want you to run, if they want to run against somebody, they're going to go the opposite. For instance, they don't want to run against me. And now, I just gave you a poll. I'm 9 points up on Biden. But they're the party of disinformation. So what they say is, oh, we want to run against Trump. Now, they always do that. You know, they do that. And other people would do it, but they do it pretty much better than others.
Is there anything they could throw at you legally that would convince you to drop out of the race? If you get convicted in this case in New York,
no, I'd never drop out. No, I'd never drop. It's not my thing. I wouldn't do it.
No, I'd never drop out, he said, bottom lining it for us. Donald Trump spent 4 years in office taking what was considered a very tough stand on China. And with that in mind, his descriptions of a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago were remarkably nuanced and even affectionate. Really interesting story. Xi, by the way, apparently speaks English secretly. You'll hear it right after the break. Welcome back from windy Palm Beach, Florida. We spent more than an hour with Donald Trump today, and we were struck throughout the course of the conversation how his grasp of foreign policy, this man who was supposedly stupid, his understanding of world affairs is so much more nuanced and sophisticated and pro-American than the moronic neocons currently in charge. It was remarkable. Let's send all our ammo to Ukraine. Zelensky's like Churchill. Okay. Trump disagrees with that, and some of the stories he told us from his time as president were amazing. Trump and Chairman Xi having chocolate cake at Mar-a-Lago. That's the setup. Here's the payoff.
I told China, if you buy any oil from Iran, President Xi, very good conversations. I liked him a lot. I told him we shot 57 missiles into Syria while he was having chocolate cake. It's the only time he said, repeat. That was the only word I've ever heard him say in English, meaning he speaks English, okay?
You know? He speaks English?
Well, I'll tell you what. This is an interesting thing. we're having dinner at Mar-a-Lago, and he wanted to be at Mar-a-Lago. We had a great weekend. But we were having dessert now, beautiful chocolate cake at Mar-a-Lago. He had his people, I had mine. He was telling me stories about China, the history of China. It's very amazing. It's got an amazing 5,000 years, amazing history. And President Obama didn't go over the red line, and because of that, Russia took over Syria, and there's a whole big thing, right? You know that. If Obama would have done what he said he was going to do, because they were killing children. They were killing children with gas bombs. By the hundreds, by the thousands in Syria. And he said, if that happens again, and it happened a number of times, and he still never went over the line, but I did. So I shot 57 missiles, almost every one of them hit, into a military area, which had a lot of planes, wiped out a lot of planes, also had Russian soldiers, by the way. They say I was so nice to Russia, right? I killed the pipeline. I sadly killed a lot of Russian soldiers, that 500 group, because they were doing things that they weren't supposed to. Nobody writes that, and I don't want them to write it. I'm not proud of it, but we did that, as you know. But we shot approximately 57 missiles. And so when I dealt with President Xi, I was with him the whole weekend. He had an incredible, I'm not allowed to say it because it's very impolite and very politically incorrect, a beautiful female interpreter. She was very beautiful. Today, if you say it, they'll say, this is terrible. You're not allowed to say that. But she was very professional. She spoke every word for him. Very professional. Had another couple of them, too. But she was there, and we're having dinner. And he would come in and say hello. She would say hello. He wouldn't say any word. But I said to him, a general came up and said, do we do it now? I said, yeah, you have to do it now. So I gave the order during dinner. Then I said, well, do I tell him? Because they're very closely associated with Syria. Do I tell him now, or do I wait till he finds out after dinner? Because you have about 28 minutes before they hit. So I said, President, we've just fired approximately 57 missiles into Syria, into a base. The missiles are on their way right now. He looked at me and goes, repeat. That's the only time he's ever said it. So I think he speaks English. The only word, he never said hello or goodbye. He only dealt through an interpreter. The only word I ever heard him say was repeat. That's an unusual word. I said,
how smart is he? Could you tell?
Top of the line.
Top of the line.
Yeah, they're all top of the line. Our guy's not top of the line. Never was. These are top of the line people at the top of their game. President Xi is a brilliant man. If you went all over Hollywood to look for somebody to play the role of President Xi, you couldn't find it. There's nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. We had a great relationship. When he first came to Mar-a-Lago, he came the first day. He was there for a few days. We were going to have a 50. It was so organized by them and by us, but by them. Very boom, boom, boom. Everything's like business, no games. They don't say, gee, how did the Yankees do last night? Oh, that was a wonderful. They don't care. They don't care about anything. I said, do you ever go to a Broadway play? I'll take you to one. Do you ever have plays like, do you ever go? No, I don't. No. This is business. These aren't game players, right? I like it. In a way I like it. I have no life, but that's what he likes.
Yeah.
Top of the line, smart, top of the line. When they came in, it was supposed to be a meeting that lasted exactly 15 minutes. Then we go to breakout sessions they had like 40 people. We had 40 people. The comparables, right? And we're sitting across the table from each other in the ballroom of Mar-a-Lago. And it was an amazing scene. But our meeting was supposed to take 15 minutes. It took 4 hours. We got along so well. There was a great chemistry we had. Great. We talked about everything. A great chemistry. But people ask me, how smart is she? I said, top of the line. You never met anybody smarter. How smart is Kim Jong-un? Top of the line. People say, oh, this and that. Really smart. When you come out and as a young man at 24, 23, even though he sort of inherits it, most people, when they inherit, they lose it. And that's easy stuff. He took over a country of very smart people, very, very energetic people, very tough people, at a very young age, and he has total dominant control. That's not easy. These are very smart. Putin, very smart. Now, he's had, and probably, don't forget, that whole thing is not, if he took over all of Ukraine. And what are we going to do? Because Biden is so committed to Ukraine. What happens if it's a not winnable war? There are people that say Ukraine cannot win, can't beat Russia. Russia right now, I'm not saying anything out of school. I read it in one of our newspapers, so it's probably fake news, but maybe not. I don't think it is. Russia right now is making massive amounts of ammunition. Sounds simple, right? But they're making massive beyond anything they've ever made before. We don't have any ammunition. We've given it to Ukraine. We're not prepared to fight. I rebuilt our military, new planes, new tanks, new everything. They've taken the military that I've rebuilt, and they've given it all to Ukraine. Massive amounts.
So who blew up Europe's biggest natural gas pipeline? We asked Trump, he would know, and he does. That's next. So the lunatics in the Biden administration promised to blow up Europe's biggest natural gas pipeline, and then Europe's biggest natural gas pipeline got blown up. Who did it? You're not allowed to ask questions, but we wanted to know what Donald Trump thought. He might know. Here he is. Who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline?
I don't want to get our country in trouble, so I won't answer it. But I can tell you who it wasn't, was Russia. How about when they blamed Russia? They said Russia blew up their own pipeline. You got a kick out of that one, too. It wasn't Russia.
Pretty diplomatic answer for a man who's supposed to be crazy. We're going to play the full clip for you tomorrow night. That's it for us here in hurricane season at Palm Beach. Here's the great Sean Hannity to take over. And welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Once you decide that human beings are gods with the power to rewrite history, biology, and nature, the power to shape reality itself, once you decide that, there's no reason to stop at sex changes. Transgenderism is certainly faddish at the moment. None of us can stop talking about it. But men magically morphing into women is not the final stage of anything. Instead, it's the first of many similar movements that are on the way inevitably. And the few visionaries who have grasped this obvious truth, weirdly, have not been welcomed by Blue America. They have been mocked and derided, as prophets always are. A few years ago, for example, a blue-eyed blonde woman from Montana called Rachel Dolezal declared that she was black because she decided that she was black. Blackness was Rachel Dolezal's lived experience. But she was not greeted as a liberator. She was almost immediately booed off the stage, and then she disappeared. And yet, tellingly, none of the people yelling at Rachel Dolezal ever explained why she couldn't be black. Why not? In this country, you can change your sex, but not your race? Really? How does that work? What species of science are we talking about here? It was not a defensible argument. And so over time, like all indefensible arguments, it will collapse. Someday the New York Times will give Rachel Dolezal its coveted glass ceiling award for her courage in the face of prejudice. That will happen. But before it does, we'd like to highlight some of the early adopters of our new civic religion, where each of us is God of the universe with utter dominion over nature. These are the trailblazers, the pathfinders, the Daniel Boones of progressive identity politics. One of them is a man called Justin Pearson. Pearson has been in the news recently for helping to facilitate an insurrection at the Tennessee State House. You may have seen him. But you may not know what Justin Pearson was like before his transition. Back in 2016, Justin Pearson was an earnest young student at Bowdoin, the whitest college in the whitest state in America, a place that cost $60 grand a year for no obvious reason. A rich kid school. Here's what Justin Pearson looked like then as he ran for president of student government. I want to bring everyone together, said Justin Pearson, in a voice that if you closed your eyes, you could easily imagine coming from a suburban orthodontist. Justin Pearson wasn't white, that's probably how he got into Bowdoin in the first place, but he did a fantastic impression of it. What a nice young man. Has he considered the apprenticeship program at Citibank? That was the old Justin Pearson, before his transition. Here he is now on the floor of the Tennessee State House.
All hope seemed to be lost. Representatives were thrown out of the State House. Democracy seemed to be at its end. Seemed like the NRA and gun lobbyists might win. But oh, that was good news for us. I don't know how long this Saturday in the state of Tennessee might last. But oh, we have good news, folks. We've got good news that Sunday always comes.
Justin Pearson has a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, everyone will do exactly what he wants or else face indictment by the Department of Justice. Justin Pearson has changed quite dramatically, as you can see. He transitioned from a crypto white kid into the modern incarnation of Martin Luther King Jr. himself. It's remarkable, really. But he's not alone in that. You see this all the time. Everybody in the Democratic Party wants to be Martin Luther King at this point. Even Joe Biden, who during the famous March on Washington was enjoying the many benefits of life as a college student in a racially segregated state. Now, he's MLK. They all are. But you got to ask yourself, as long as we're mimicking civil rights leaders who died almost 60 years ago, why not some variety? You never see politicians transition to, say, Malcolm X. Why is that? Maybe because Malcolm X didn't talk like a sharecropper. He spoke dignified standard English. He wasn't running a shakedown racket to fleece guilty white liberals. Malcolm X had self-respect, so he despised guilty white liberals, and he said so. He believed in self-improvement. He knew who the enemy was. So maybe it's not surprising that Malcolm X is not a popular transition choice in 2023. Al Sharpton, by contrast, is increasingly popular, especially now that he's skinny and has a paying job. Sandy Cortez of Westchester recently pulled off a double transition. Not only did she change sexes, Al Sharpton identifies as a man, but races as well. Here she is unveiling her new self in front of Sharpton's own National Action Network.
I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with working retail, folding clothes for other people to buy. There is nothing wrong with preparing the food that your neighbors will eat. There is nothing wrong with driving the buses that take your family to work.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. In other words, yo, my brother, sup? That's not bad for a girl who grew up in an all-white suburb in leafy Westchester County as the daughter of the president of an architectural firm. But don't mention any of that. That's dead naming. These days, she'd like a gin and juice with salsa and frijoles because Sandy Cortez doesn't just transition once, she keeps transitioning. She's a cutting-edge shapeshifter who collects identities the way Imelda Marcos did shoes. So she started life as a privileged white girl, then became a middle-aged black man engaged in the civil rights movement, and then in October, she transformed effortlessly into a Latinx cartoon character. Watch this.
Listen, all right, listen, okay?
Okay, I got you. You may call that fraudulent, she calls it transitioning. They don't talk like that in Westchester County. But she learned this from the very best. Barack Obama paved the way. Obama grew up with his white mother and white grandparents from Kansas in an apartment in Honolulu, a city that has approximately 0 black people. Then he moved to Indonesia, then California, and New York. But at some point, Barack Obama decided he didn't want to be any of the things he actually was, so he transitioned. He became, because you can do this now, an African-American Baptist pastor from Chicago with deep roots in Mississippi. Here's Barack Obama post-transition in December.
If John Lewis, even in his 70s, wasn't tired, I got no excuses, I can't be tired. If the men and women who had to endure the sting of discrimination, the smack of belly clubs, were tired. If the folks who had to fight those early fights, those were the tough fights for union rights and voting rights and gay rights and women's rights. If they didn't get tired, you can't be tired.
Barack Obama is sick and tired of being sick and tired. It was the smack of the billy clubs in Honolulu that did it. It was the fire hoses and snarling German shepherds at Harvard Law School. At some point, Obama crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge of his mind and transitioned into Ralph Abernathy, except an atheist and much thinner. But Hillary Clinton was there first. She transitioned when he didn't even know what the word meant. And in some ways, Hillary made an even longer journey. She was identified by an obstetrician at birth as the daughter of an executive from the suburban Midwest. But inside, she always knew she was very different from that. She was trapped inside a body that wasn't hers. But it wasn't until 2007 that Hillary Clinton finally mustered the courage to identify as what she was all along, a politically aware gospel singer from the segregated South. Here she is on the Chitlin Circuit in Alabama.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy.
Performing tonight, ladies and gentlemen, at Constitution Hall. Joe Biden actually was born in a slave state, and as we mentioned, for the first nearly 30 years of his life, enjoyed all the many perks of living in a Jim Crow city. But that's not a story that audiences are interested in hearing a lot about at this point. So Joe Biden did what we are all now allowed to do in modern America. He erased his former identity. You saw this recently with the trans admiral. He declared it never happened. You can't know what happened. It's a dead name. And he transitioned into something else. So Joe Biden still grew up in a segregated state, but now he was the one at the back of the bus, feeling the thump of the billy club, the sting of the fire hose. Joe Biden is now black. Watch.
A senator from Florida going after Medicare and Social Security? I tell you what, I don't know where, as they say, Southern don't know where you all been. Hot damn, boy.
Hot damn. Hot damn. And at no time in his life did Joe Biden ever support segregated schools in Delaware, contrary to what Kamala Harris told us during the Democratic debates last time. Kamala Harris has forgotten all about that because it never happened. And in Kamala Harris's case, there's a whole palette of identities to choose from. So here you have someone who is the daughter, technically, or was identified at birth as the daughter of a Jamaican college professor and an Indian college professor who grew up in Canada, in Montreal, Quebec. So actually, Kamala Harris can be essentially anything she wants. And 2 years ago, she transitioned and became a baguette-eating, beret-wearing, bicycle-riding French lady. Here she is. In France, we call it fromage and speak in broken English. It's too bad the Ukrainian accent is so hard to master, because a lot of these people would already have transitioned into refugees from Kyiv. Well, we're learning tonight from a leak from the Department of Justice to the Washington Post that the special counsel investigating Donald Trump, the Republican frontrunner, is now looking into whether he committed wire fraud. Okay? So as his numbers go up, the number of investigations multiply. This one appears to be related to Trump's fundraising efforts between the 2020 election and January 6th. Of course, this is an effort to sideline the frontrunner in the Republican Party while they figure out what to do with Joe Biden.